So we arrive in northern New Mexico. Angela's a participant observer at a detox clinic. And I'm kind of like along for the ride. And even though I knew what Angela's work was about, I knew the darkness of it, the scariness of it, the danger even of it, somehow it wasn't really registering for me when we arrived on that landscape. I was thinking about D.H. Lawrence and his cabin above the cows. And how I was going to be like D.H. Lawrence, writing my books, you know, in the shadow of the treacherous peaks, the snow-capped 13,000-foot peaks. Shortly after we arrived, this is what we encountered. Get the fuck out of here. Sunday afternoon. For the past hour, screaming and crying, fists pounding on a car hood, screen door slamming, and in the midst of the battle, the voice of a small boy talking to himself in a make-believe game. I said, I want you out of here. These are my neighbors. Rose Garcia and Jose Martinez, a couple, both 23 years old. Their boy is perhaps 5. She is light-skinned with long, thick black hair that she teases up in front, old-school Chicana style. She is somewhat pear-shaped, and what's striking about her body is the constant tension of it, every pose tense and blunt as a hammer. She almost always wears t-shirts and pants and flip-flops. Jose Martinez is short and wiry. He wears his baseball caps backward, XXX size white t-shirts, and during the summer, shorts and tennis shoes. I've never seen him without his head covered. What little hair peeks out from beneath the cap is cut very close, a crew cut. I rarely hear his voice, even though the courtyard in front of the house somehow acts as a megaphone so that the southern end of the village can listen in on everything. It's almost always Rose's screams we hear. The fights occur a couple of times a week. I'm in the attic. I've made my writing space next to the window that looks out on Joe Rendon's trailer, is our other neighbor on the other side, and the Juniper Hills beyond the highway. I've taken one of the old, heavy doors stored in the garage and propped it up on sawhorses. The door probably hung in one of the original bedrooms downstairs. It is now my writing desk. You took my mota! She's accusing him of stealing her marijuana. I didn't take your mota, bitch. When I hear the screams, I edge up to the window at the other end of the attic, where Angela writes, and where I have a direct view of Rose and Jose's. I'm careful to remain in shadow, although I doubt my neighbors can see me, given the angle and distance. In any case, they are too deep in their moment to look across the courtyard and up to the tiny window of their neighbor's attic. Sometimes Angela joins me. I kneel by the window, and she stands. Or I sit in the rocking chair, and she sits on the floor and rests her chin on an arm she supports on the windowsill. We stay for as long as the fight lasts, until he jumps into his car and drives off in a cloud of dust. Only rarely does she drive off. Upon his return, it'll start up again, muffled shouting from inside the house, a word, then a phrase, louder, closer to the front door. The door opens, now coming at us full volume. Get the fuck out of my life. This is her most oft-repeated line. She struts back inside again. The door slams. Now it's quiet in the courtyard and in the rest of the village. There was a late season freeze last night. The sun has warmed the Espanola Valley. The local weather forecaster wrote that it was going to be a Chamber of Commerce day. Flies buzz lazily in the yellow and green and blue of spring. I can hear the rhythmic whir of a few cicadas, the first of the year, coming up from the riverside. That's the Rio Grande. The whoosh of cars and trucks up and down the highway, the distant thudding of locals taking target practice on the BLM land across the highway. We are surrounded by millions of acres of public land that once belonged to the ancestors of my neighbors. And suddenly, go to that little puta of yours. Her voice builds and crests in a shriek. which usually happens on the final word of a phrase, like life, taking the vowel and bending it in several different directions before her breath runs out. Then she coughs. She coughs a lot. I hear it early in the morning, late at night. I hear it very clearly when she is sitting on the patio smoking a joint. It's quick and sharp, the throat clenching and tissue grating deep inside her chest. Every once in a while, he responds, but he never shouts as loudly as she does. Look at you, you're psycho, eh? They are dealing. We've noticed the traffic. Perhaps a dozen cars a day drive through. These customers are men, all Hispanos, as Mexican Americans call themselves in northern New Mexico, young and old, mostly in work trucks. Some will come early in the morning, apparently on their way to a trade job, plumbing, electrical. Others in the early evening, clearly after finishing work. Some in the middle of the day. Some in the wee hours. It's Rose's house. The Garcias, it just so happens that our neighbors have the surnames Garcia and Martinez. Angela's a Garcia. The Garcias are prominent in the area. One member of the clan owns the nightclub in the village, another the fruit stand that's never open at the intersection of the highway with the Leiden Road. The Garcias, I'm told, are an old, connected family, so well connected that our landlady passed on to us the advice she was given by local law enforcement when she suspected that Jose had stolen her lawnmower. We can't do anything to them, the cops told her. But if you want to take action on your own, shoot him, drag him into your house, and make it look like self-defense against breaking and entering. Get the fuck out of here, you fuck. You and your bills? You think I'm fucked up? Look in the mirror. So Angela and I watch and listen through the screens on the attic windows. The journalist in me thinks, talk to them. Yeah, get close. But we already are. They're our neighbors, after all. Rose is aware of our presence. During the first fight we witnessed, which occurred just a couple of weeks after our arrival, and which included Rose and another woman coming to blows on the patio, she screamed, "I don't need this shit! I got new neighbors!" Outsiders, I could imagine her calculating. Perhaps even thinking of us as gringos. She drives a Subaru. He never leaves the house before 10 in the morning. Because class can trump race, of course. And in New Mexico, race does not necessarily mean color. Plenty of Hispanos who claim Spanish lineage back it up with light skin and eyes. So over a period of months of adjusting to our arrival in Velarde, the name of the village we're living in, we come to an agreement, all of us. They won't get in our shit, we won't get in theirs. Which means we must not feel compassion, or loathing, or fear. We must not feel anything for each other. But still, I go to the window in the attic. When Joe Rendon, my other neighbor, and I talk across the fence, sometimes we'll discuss the latest eruption next door. He shakes his head. Joe's young, but he talks like he's old, a man of tradition, Hispano tradition. He's always reminding me that the Rendones owned the land all the way from the highway to the river. There were orchards and pasture, he says, cows and sheep. There was good snow every winter and good rain every summer. Oh yeah, there were fights, of course. A lot of drinking, but not cocaine. And not heroin, that's for sure. Now look at us. The sun dips below the black mesa, bringing Velarde's early twilight. No matter what time of year it is, the sun goes down an hour earlier than it does anywhere else. The black mesa is about 1,000 feet high, right in the shadow of it. Rose explodes one last time. I can't take it anymore. Now she shoots off in her red Chevy SUV. He stays behind with their son, putters around the yard. She returns in a few minutes, charging down the road in a dust cloud. She screams some more, goes back inside the house. At true dusk, when the last of the sunlight bleeds away from the eastern hills, beyond the reach of the mesa's shadow, and leaves them in a blue-gray pallor, I hear her screams again. I walk upstairs to the window, where I've spent the better part of the afternoon. I can see the dome light inside José's small black sedan with the tinted windows. He's sitting inside, listening to music that I can't hear. The little boy is gone. I eat dinner alone. Angela's on the graveyard shift at the clinic. On Turner Classic Movies, I watch A Night to Remember. Gentlemen, we're in a precarious situation. I go to the attic to write. I look out the back window one last time. The dome light in the sedan is off now. A thin line of light seeps through the crack at the bottom of the front door. So that's a glimpse at an early point in the narrative in the book when we're adjusting to life in this village of Velarde in New Mexico in the Espanol.